Listen closely, because what you're about to hear is not motivation, but a psychological strike, an initiation into the identity of a person who cannot be bent, bought, or broken. They fear the individual who needs nothing, the one who withdraws from society's dependencies and rises beyond its manipulations. And today, that evolution begins with you. Most people crawl through life, starving for validation, clinging to attention like children gripping shadows. They beg for approval, never realizing each request tightens the chains around their mind. But your presence here signals something different, a fracture in the old identity, a willingness to step into the cold terrain where true power is forged without comfort or permission. Understand this: independence isn't a lifestyle, it's psychological warfare. When you detach from unnecessary desires, the world loses its leverage over you, and a man without leverage against him becomes untouchable. This path isn't about rejecting emotion, it's about refusing to be ruled by it. It's not about abandoning the world, it's about ensuring the world never owns you again. As you listen, embed this command into your mind. I choose power, I choose discipline, I choose independence. Write it in the comments now. Your first act of self-ownership. By the end of this monologue, you will understand why Machiavelli taught rulers to master themselves before ruling anything else, and why the one who desires nothing inevitably influences everything. If any line hits you, comment this again. I do not chase power, I become power. Your transformation begins the moment you claim it. Number 1, the root of dependence. Most people never realize the truth. The world does not attack their strength, it attacks their dependence. Every weakness you carry, emotional, financial, psychological, becomes an entry point for control. Nothing enslaves you faster than the needs you refuse to conquer. You were conditioned from childhood to seek approval, follow expectations, and obey invisible scripts. Society taught you to behave, to agree, to fit in, because compliant minds are easier to manipulate. Dependency is not an accident. It is a deliberate, engineered vulnerability. Understand this clearly. The moment you need something from another person, they gain psychological leverage over you. Your desires become leashes, your fears become cages, and those who sense your dependence will quietly shape you into what benefits them, not you. Dependence rots your instincts. It silences your intuition. It convinces you to tolerate disrespect, betray your standards, and accept lesser treatment than you deserve. The world loves a man who doubts himself, because the doubting man is predictable, fragile, and easy to maneuver. This is why Machiavelli warned that a ruler must never rely on what he does not control. Power requires autonomy. Influence requires detachment. The moment your happiness relies on external sources, you hand them the authority to decide when you rise and when you fall. You may think your chains are subtle, needing reassurance, craving validation, expecting recognition, but subtle chains restrain just as tightly as iron ones. The psychological shackles you ignore become the same shackles that quietly dictate every decision you make. To break these chains, you must confront the brutal truth. Your life only becomes dangerous when you stop needing what weak men chase. Security, approval, comfort. These are illusions sold to keep you numb. True strength begins where false safety dies. The solution is not isolation, it is internal domination. You do not withdraw from the world, you extract your identity from its influence. You choose logic over impulse, self-respect over desire, and independence over emotional intoxication. You must train your mind to survive without applause, succeed without permission, and walk away without hesitation. A man who stays calm in abandonment, centered in conflict, and unmoved by rejection becomes impossible to manipulate. This is the psychological evolution weak men never undergo. When you feel the urge to seek approval, pause and replace it with presence. When you feel the need to be understood, choose silence. When you crave validation, choose discipline. Your restraint is your weapon. Your detachment is your armor. Your independence is your power. Write this in the comments now so it sears into your identity. My power begins where my dependence ends. This will anchor the transformation you're undergoing, because a truth you write becomes a truth you live. And remember this, once you stop needing the world starts needing you. That is the shift every powerful individual discovers, and the shift you are stepping into right now. Number 2, the power of withdrawal. When you step back from the world, something terrifying happens. You begin to see everything clearly, not through emotion, not through desperation, but through pure, unfiltered awareness. Withdrawal is not weakness. It is the recalibration that reveals who controls you and why. Most people drown in noise. They cling to relationships, opinions, and digital validation because silence exposes their emptiness. But when you remove yourself from the noise, you confront the source of your dependence, and the moment you confront it, you start to destroy it. The power of withdrawal lies in what it forces: self-honesty. You see the people you overvalued, the habits that weakened you, the desires that manipulated you. Nothing hides in isolation. Withdrawal strips illusions, leaving only the truth, and truth is the blade that cuts dependency. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Rulers withdrew not to escape pressure, but to sharpen their judgment. A mind untangled from external influence becomes a weapon. A man who no longer reacts becomes a strategist. Withdrawal is the furnace where clarity is forged and weakness is incinerated. When you distance yourself from emotional intoxication, you regain control of your thoughts. Your self-worth stops depending on who texts you, who praises you, or who acknowledges your existence. You begin to operate from internal certainty, not external permission. That is the first stage of psychological dominance. Withdrawal teaches you how people behave when they can no longer use you. Some will panic, some will resent you, some will disappear. Pay attention. How they respond reveals who was genuine and who was feeding off your dependence. Silence exposes motives better than confrontation ever could. The world fears the man who walks alone, not because solitude makes him dangerous, but because solitude makes him unpredictable. A man who needs nothing cannot be bribed, guilted, or emotionally steered. That kind of independence makes people uncomfortable because they cannot influence what they cannot reach. But understand this, withdrawal is not disappearance, it is strategic distance. You step back not to hide, but to rebuild your inner architecture. You refine your discipline, sharpen your ambitions, and strengthen your boundaries. You return to the world with a presence that is colder, calmer, and impossible to manipulate. This is the solution to your internal chaos. Step away from everything that diluted your power. The conversations that drained you, the people who confused you, the environments that controlled you. Pull your energy back, reclaim your time, and let your silence speak for you. And as you rise, imprint this command into your identity by writing it in the comments. My silence rebuilds me. My withdrawal empowers me. This is how you shift from reactive to strategic, from dependent to dominant, from manipulated to untouchable. The moment you withdraw with purpose, your power stops leaking outward and begins compounding inward. And once you learn to operate from that still, disciplined center, nothing external will ever control you again. Number 3, detachment, the ultimate advantage. Detachment is not emotional numbness, it is emotional mastery. When you detach, you reclaim the power people tried to take from you. You stop reacting to their behavior, and they lose the ability to influence your internal world. This is the beginning of true psychological sovereignty. Most people live as slaves to their emotional triggers. One insult destroys their confidence. One rejection collapses their identity. They react to everything, never realizing that reaction is the chain that binds them. Detachment breaks the chain and replaces it with cold, unwavering clarity. When you detach, you stop negotiating with disrespect. You stop explaining your worth. You stop chasing people who do not value you. You no longer bend your standards to keep connections alive. Detachment forces the world to meet you on your terms, or lose access to you entirely. Machiavelli understood this principle deeply. He taught rulers to avoid emotional entanglement because attachment makes decisions irrational. Detachment, however, sharpens judgment. A detached mind sees patterns, motives, and hidden agendas long before they strike. It turns you from prey into strategist. Detachment gives you a terrifying advantage, the ability to walk away. Most manipulation succeeds because people fear loss. But a man who can walk away from anything, relationships, opportunities, comfort, is a man who cannot be controlled. His presence becomes a privilege, not a default. Detachment frees you from the emotional storms of others. You no longer absorb their chaos, insecurity, or volatility. You see their actions without internalizing them. You evaluate without personal bias. You respond without emotional contamination. This distance gives you the upper hand in every interaction. When you detach, you stop seeking validation. You no longer require praise to feel worthy. You no longer crumble beneath criticism. You stand firm, self-contained, self-assured. And the less you need from others, the more respect you command. Because independence is magnetic and rare. Detachment forces people to reveal their true intentions. Without your neediness to shield them, their behavior becomes transparent. You see who values you, who uses you, and who only stays because you never set boundaries. Clarity emerges where confusion once lived. This is the solution to emotional exhaustion. Step back from anything that drains your power. Do not argue. Do not beg. Do not explain. Distance yourself with cold discipline. Your silence will do more than your words ever could. To solidify this shift, write this in the comments. My detachment is my liberation. I choose clarity over chaos. This statement is not decoration. It is identity formation. A man becomes what he repeatedly affirms with intention. Remember this truth. The detached man is not heartless. He is ungoverned. And once you master detachment, you stop being shaped by the world, and the world starts being shaped by you. Number 4, self-sufficiency, the unbreakable foundation. Self-sufficiency is the trait that terrifies manipulators the most. When you learn to rely on yourself, emotionally, financially, mentally, you remove every handle they could use to control you. A self-sufficient man becomes a closed fortress, impossible to penetrate, impossible to sway. Weak men hope someone will save them. Strong men become the ones who never need saving. The world respects the man who stands alone, not because he rejects help, but because he refuses to collapse without it. Independence is the silent force behind every powerful individual. Most people are psychologically bankrupt. They rely on others for confidence, direction, and stability. If someone leaves, their life collapses. If validation disappears, their identity fractures. This fragility comes from never learning to be the source of their own strength. Self-sufficiency demands brutal self-examination. You must confront your emotional dependencies, financial weaknesses, and mental blind spots. You must identify where you still seek permission, where you still fear loss, where you still cling to comfort. These are the cracks where manipulation enters. Seal the cracks. Regain your power. Machiavelli warned rulers never to rely on mercenaries or external support because borrowed power fails when needed most. The same applies to your life. Strength borrowed from others collapses. Strength cultivated within you endures every storm. The self-sufficient man becomes his own army. To become self-sufficient, you must master 3 domains: your mind, your money, and your emotions. When your mind is disciplined, your finances stable, and your emotions under command, no external event can destabilize you. You become unshakable, centered, strategically dangerous. Mental self-sufficiency means your decisions are not influenced by fear of judgment. You think in long-term strategies, not short-term impulses. You act from logic, not desperation. You become someone who guides himself, calmly, consistently, relentlessly, without seeking external approval. Financial self-sufficiency removes one of humanity's strongest chains. Money is leverage, and those who lack it are easily controlled. Build your skills, expand your value, and create income streams that remove dependence on unstable people and unstable situations. Wealth is psychological freedom. Emotional self-sufficiency is the final and most feared evolution. When your self-worth is rooted in discipline, not attention. When your peace is internal, not borrowed. When your confidence comes from action, not praise. You become immune to emotional manipulation. No one can weaponize your feelings again. This is the solution to the chaos that once ruled your life. Become the source of your own stability. From your courage, your discipline, your resilience. The more you build yourself, the less you rely on anyone else, and the more powerful you become. To anchor this identity, comment this phrase: I depend on no one. I build myself into power. Write it with intention. Every word you declare becomes a brick in the fortress you are constructing around your mind. Once you achieve self-sufficiency, you do not fear loss, rejection, or abandonment. Nothing external can collapse you anymore. And the world realizes something chilling. They cannot break a man who no longer needs them. Number 5. Control of emotion, the edge that makes you dangerous. Emotion is the greatest weapon ever used against you, not because you feel, but because you react. A man who cannot control his emotional storms becomes predictable, exploitable, and blind. But when you master emotion, you become untouchable in ways most people will never comprehend. People manipulate through your feelings because emotions bypass logic. They make you impulsive, defensive, reckless. They push you into decisions you regret. They trap you in cycles you can't escape. Emotional chaos is the battlefield where weak men lose. Emotional control is where strong men dominate. Those who cannot govern their emotions become servants to those who can. Every outburst, every insecurity, every fear reveals where you can be controlled. A calm exterior hides your vulnerabilities. A disciplined mind hides your intentions. Stillness confuses manipulators who expect you to shatter. Machiavelli taught rulers to appear composed even when under pressure, because composure intimidates more effectively than aggression. When your face shows nothing, your enemies see nothing. They cannot predict you. They cannot read you. They cannot use your reactions to shape your behavior. That is silent power. To control emotion is not to suppress it. It is to observe it without being enslaved. Anger becomes strategy. Fear becomes awareness. Sadness becomes recalibration. Desire becomes discipline. When emotion serves you instead of using you, you operate with an edge few ever achieve. Most men crumble in conflict because they personalize everything. They assume every challenge is an attack on their worth. Emotionally controlled men see conflict as information, nothing more. The less you internalize, the more you adapt. Adaptation is survival. Emotional management is evolution. When you feel provoked, slow down. When you feel threatened, breathe deeper. When someone tries to trigger you, go silent. Silence is the sharpest knife you own. It cuts their expectations. It slices through manipulation. It forces them to reveal themselves without you revealing anything. Emotional control also frees you from the opinions of others. Praise no longer inflates you. Criticism no longer cripples you. You stop being shaped by external perception. You start being shaped by internal direction. That shift from external influence to internal authority changes everything about the way you move. This is the solution to emotional exhaustion. Remove the world's access to your internal state. Not everyone deserves a reaction. Not everyone deserves your vulnerability. Protect your emotional energy the way a king protects his throne, with vigilance, boundaries, and cold discernment. To anchor this shift, comment this phrase right now: my emotions obey me, not the world. This is the identity you step into, the version of you who cannot be provoked, pressured, or psychologically steered by anyone. Understand this truth: a man who controls his emotions controls the tone of every room he enters. He becomes the one others adjust themselves around. That is the silent dominance you are learning to wield. That is the evolution few have the discipline to achieve. Number 6, the art of calculated distance. People assume power comes from presence, but the truth is far colder. Real power comes from distance. When you give less of yourself, your value increases. When you step back, others step forward. Distance creates scarcity, and scarcity creates psychological gravity. The world is addicted to availability. Everyone is reachable, exposed, distracted, endlessly accessible. That makes them easy to manipulate. But the person who pulls away who becomes selective, scarce, unpredictable, immediately shifts the power dynamic. You go from seeker to sought after, from option to priority. Calculated distance is not isolation, it is strategic absence. You deliberately create space to observe how others behave without your influence. It reveals who depends on you, who respects you, and who only valued your constant access because it made their life easier. Distance unmasks motives. When you reduce your availability, some people will panic. Their discomfort exposes their entitlement. They believed they owned your time, your attention, your energy. But your withdrawal reminds them you belong to no one. Their reaction reveals who was using you, not appreciating you. This principle is pure Machiavellian psychology. A ruler never reveals his full presence. He shows up when it matters, disappears when it benefits him, and controls the rhythm of access. Those who control the rhythm control the relationship. Distance becomes a form of dominance. Calculated distance also rebuilds your worth in your own eyes. You stop overgiving, you stop chasing, you stop explaining yourself, you stop tolerating behavior that fragments your self-respect. The less you give your presence to undeserving people, the more sacred your presence becomes to yourself. People only value what is limited. It is human nature. If you're always available, you're invisible. If you're always present, you're taken for granted. But when you step back with intention, your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. Silence becomes your message. Distance also strengthens your judgment. Without emotional noise clouding your perception, you can see people's true patterns, their inconsistencies, their manipulation, their loyalty, their ego. Clarity only comes from stepping away. Proximity blinds, distance reveals. This is why stepping back is a solution, not a retreat. Calculated distance builds internal strength. You develop the discipline to walk alone without craving attention. You learn to act without seeking reassurance. You gain the ability to move strategically instead of emotionally. This is how powerful men operate. Quietly, selectively, relentlessly. This approach is your path forward. Stop offering full access to people who offer you nothing in return. Choose distance over desperation, silence over explanation, and boundaries over approval. Your value multiplies the moment you stop giving it away freely. To anchor this identity shift, comment this phrase: "My distance commands respect." Let it carve itself into your psyche, because once you master the art of calculated distance, you stop chasing power, and power starts chasing you. Number 7, the strategy of silence. Silence is the weapon cowardly minds fear most. Not arguments, not explanations, silence. It starves manipulators, confuses opportunists, and disarms those who depend on your reactions to feel powerful. Silence is not the absence of noise, it is the presence of control. People expect emotional responses. They expect you to defend yourself, justify yourself, prove yourself. When you refuse to react, you sever the psychological strings they hope to pull. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their insecurity right back at them, and it breaks them faster than anger ever could. Silence is Machiavellian precision. It forces others to reveal their intentions, their impatience, their fear, and their dependence on your emotional contribution. A person who panics when you go quiet is a person who expected power over you. Silence exposes every hidden motive. When you stay silent, you force others to sit with the truth. They hear their own words echo. They feel their own guilt sharpen. They realize you are not accessible for emotional manipulation. Silence creates a psychological vacuum, and people fill vacuums with confession, regret, and desperation. Weak men speak to be understood. Strong men speak only when it shifts outcomes. The rest of the time they observe. They calculate. They allow others to reveal information impulsively. Silence gives you the advantage of knowledge, and knowledge is the root of strategic dominance. Silence is not passive, it is selective aggression. It is the refusal to feed situations that do not deserve your energy. It is the decision to conserve your power instead of wasting it on people who seek drama, attention, or control. Silence is your boundary in its purest form. Most conflict becomes worse because people talk too soon, too emotionally, too loudly. Silence makes you unpredictable. People cannot argue with someone who won't engage. They cannot escalate when you deny them fuel. They cannot manipulate when you do not react. Silence neutralizes chaos. By mastering silence, you reclaim mental territory. You stop constantly explaining your perspective, defending your choices, or justifying your standards. You hold your truth quietly, and the world slowly adjusts to your authority. Your silence becomes the throne from which you observe everything. Silence also strengthens your internal discipline. You learn to analyze before responding, to understand before speaking, to strategize before acting. This internal stillness turns you into someone who cannot be baited, provoked, or emotionally weaponized. That is the psychological evolution the weak cannot achieve. To apply this solution in your life, practice this. Speak less, observe more, respond slowly, react rarely. Let your silence make people wonder what you're thinking instead of letting your words reveal it. Silence keeps your power in your hands, not theirs. To anchor this identity, comment this phrase now. My silence is my strategy. Write it deliberately. Because once silence becomes your weapon, you stop operating at the level of ordinary men and begin moving like someone who understands the true architecture of power. Number 8. The power of not being understood. You become dangerous the moment you stop needing to be understood. Most people crave recognition, validation, and emotional confirmation. But the man who operates without explaining himself becomes unpredictable, unreadable, and psychologically untouchable. Mystery is power, and power grows in silence. When people cannot understand you, they cannot categorize you. When they cannot categorize you, they cannot control you. They project, guess, assume, and overthink, giving you psychological dominance without lifting a finger. Confusion becomes your shield, and uncertainty becomes your silent weapon. Being misunderstood protects your strategy. The less others know about your intentions, the harder it becomes for them to interfere, sabotage, or manipulate your direction. People attack what they can predict. They fear what they cannot comprehend. Your opacity becomes a form of psychological armor. Machiavelli knew this truth. Reveal only what benefits you. Conceal everything else. Let people see your actions, but never your motives. Let them hear your words, but never your intentions. Power comes from being partially visible, present enough to be noticed, hidden enough to be untouchable. When others cannot read you, they lose their advantage. They cannot anticipate your next move. They cannot influence your decisions. They cannot detect your emotional state. Their frustration becomes your leverage. Their confusion becomes your clarity. Not being understood frees you from their expectations. The world demands transparency, but transparency is vulnerability. Once people know your fears, they exploit them. Once they know your dreams, they weaponize them. Once they know your weaknesses, they attack them. Protect your inner world the way a ruler protects his kingdom, with silence, boundaries, and selective revelation. Being misunderstood grants you psychological distance. You are no longer tangled in the emotional interpretations of others. You no longer debate your worth. You no longer justify your choices. You move with the confidence of someone who answers only to his mission, not to public opinion. Confusion also filters loyalty. When people cannot understand you yet still choose to stay, you have their genuine respect. When they only stayed because you were predictable and easy to read, your transformation exposes that illusion. Your evolution becomes the test, and their reaction becomes the result. This is the solution to social pressure. Stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying your silence. Stop defending your boundaries. The less others understand your inner logic, the more they respect the strength behind it. You are not here to be decoded. You are here to be respected. To anchor this transformation, write this in the comments. I do not need to be understood to be powerful. Let this phrase burn into your identity. It is the mindset of rulers, strategists, and men who rise without asking for permission. Remember this. The most feared individuals in history were never fully understood. They operated from depth, not display, from intention, not impulse. And you are becoming the same, someone who stands apart, moves differently, and answers only to the strength within. Number 9, becoming the person who cannot be replaced. Power does not belong to the strongest or the loudest. It belongs to the individual who cannot be replaced. When the world realizes your presence is rare, your skills uncommon, and your mindset unrepeatable, your value becomes untouchable. You evolve from optional to essential, from ordinary to irreplaceable. Most people live as interchangeable pieces. They offer nothing unique, nothing refined, nothing sharpened. They chase trends, imitate others, and dilute themselves into mediocrity. But the man who develops singular depth, mentally, emotionally, strategically, creates a power that cannot be copied or substituted. That is your goal. Irreplaceability begins with mastering what others avoid: discomfort, discipline, and solitude. You sharpen your focus while they drown in distraction. You advance your skills while they waste time. You refine your mind while they numb theirs. Power grows in the gaps where others are too weak to evolve. To become irreplaceable, you must cultivate competence so rare it creates fear. Not loud ambition, but quiet mastery. Not desperate effort, but relentless refinement. People respect potential, but they bow to excellence. Your expertise becomes your fortress. The world cannot discard what it depends on. Machiavelli understood this deeply. A ruler survives not through luck, but through preparation. When you become the person others rely on, financially, strategically, emotionally, you gain leverage. You decide the rhythm. You control the dynamic. You become the axis around which situations rotate. And that is irreplaceability. Irreplaceable men carry a presence that unsettles the weak. It's not aggression, it's certainty. It's not arrogance, it's undeniable value. People sense when they cannot manipulate you, cannot compare you, cannot find someone else who brings what you bring. Scarcity makes you powerful, distinction makes you feared. But here is the cold truth. You must detach from belonging before you can rise above it. Stop trying to fit in. Stop mirroring the herd. Stop hiding your intelligence and instincts. The world rewards those who stand apart, not those who blend in. Separation is elevation. Becoming irreplaceable also means developing internal standards so high that you outgrow mediocrity. You stop accepting average effort from yourself. You stop tolerating people who drain your progress. You stop engaging in habits that dilute your precision. Your discipline becomes the barrier that weak men cannot cross. Irreplaceability is not built in public, it is built in silence. In late hours, no one sees. In sacrifices, no one applauds. In decisions, no one understands. This hidden work creates the kind of power that shocks the world when it finally emerges. Invisible effort produces visible dominance. This is your solution to insignificance. Build yourself into someone the world cannot replicate. Someone whose value forces respect. Someone whose presence shifts dynamics without a word. Someone who is not one of many, but one of one. To anchor this transformation, write this in the comments: I become the man who cannot be replaced. Let this identity settle into your bones, because once you become irreplaceable, every room changes when you enter it, and nothing moves without your influence. Number 10, the state of needing nothing. There comes a moment when you no longer chase, no longer beg, and no longer depend, and that moment is the birth of your power. The man who needs nothing becomes the one thing society cannot bend. He becomes his own source, his own authority, his own kingdom. Needing nothing does not mean rejecting life. It means refusing to be owned by it. You stop tying your identity to relationships, possessions, or recognition. You detach from the illusions that once controlled you. You rise above the emotional economy that weak men trade in every day. The man who needs nothing cannot be threatened. You cannot punish someone who does not fear loss. You cannot tempt someone who has mastered desire. You cannot manipulate someone whose sense of worth comes from discipline, not approval. His independence disarms every tactic used against him. This is Machiavelli's deepest lesson. Power belongs to the self-contained. The ruler who stands on internal ground cannot be dethroned by external storms. His confidence is not borrowed. His vision is not influenced. His soul is not hostage to anyone's affection or rejection. When you reach this state, you no longer compete. You ascend. You no longer cling. You choose. You no longer react. You decide. The world stops being something you chase and becomes something you shape. That shift from need to command is the transformation of your entire identity. But understand this, reaching the state of needing nothing requires letting parts of yourself die. The insecure version, the approval-seeking version, the weakened version that clung to others for validation. You must bury the man who feared loss to become the one who creates it for others. Needing nothing gives you a presence that chills the room. People feel the difference instantly. Your calm unnerves them. Your silence intimidates them. Your self-sufficiency makes them question their own dependence. You become the benchmark they measure themselves against, even when they pretend not to. This is your solution to every form of psychological captivity. Build a life so internally complete that nothing external can collapse it. Not abandonment, not rejection, not failure, not betrayal. You remain whole because your wholeness was never built on them to begin with. When you need nothing, you choose everything with intention. Your relationships, your standards, your goals, your direction. You move like a strategist, not a seeker. You attract from strength, not hunger. You walk away without hesitation because your worth does not leave with what you lose. To lock this identity into your mind, write this in the comments. I need nothing, therefore I cannot be controlled. This is the creed of your transformation, the truth that will reshape your life from this moment forward. And as you rise into this new version of yourself, remember, if this monologue awakened something in you, like the video, subscribe to Dark Tactics and turn on notifications. Your evolution has only begun.